This is Claudia Gisemba, who was a student in our course last year, so a year ago, spring 2014. In the on-campus version. And I'm curious, Claudia, thank you for coming in to talk to us here and talk to the MOOC students. Curious whether you could tell us a little bit about your background and especially how it relates to food, because you have a kind of interesting family history there.
So I grew up largely vegetarian, and we would have meat once in a while, really. And so slowly by slowly, I chose to go vegan because it was so easy to transition from not eating meat. The only form of meat we would eat is chicken.
Chicken. And where was this?
This is in Kenya.
In Kenya, okay.
Though that's not the general, it's not the general form of feeding habits that people eat a lot of meat. So it's pretty special in our family that we do that.
Not just chicken though, right? Lots of meats, okay.
Lots of meat, beef, lamb, all kinds of meat.
Right.
So it was very interesting to switch to be completely vegan. And it was a concern for my parents, even if we were still practicing some form of veganism. But it was a good choice, I believe.
So your family started off mostly eating just chicken and not all the other meats?
We used to eat all other meats. But then slowly by slowly, my parents phased out red meat.
Okay.
And they just completely stopped buying red meat.
For health reasons?
Yes, pretty much. But once in a while, we would have red meat when we have guests over.
Sure.
So it was more chicken and fish, but then chicken is more readily available.
Right.
So we ended up eating a lot of chicken.
And then you decided on your own to go vegetarian or even vegan.
Yes. I phased out milk and eggs because of allergies. But the rest of my family continued eating milk and eggs.
Right.
But then I made the choice to completely quit all kinds of meat.
And that was before taking the course?
That was at the end of my senior year in high school.
That's cool. And was that for moral reasons or also health related?
Both moral and health reasons.
Okay.
Yes.
So you were concerned a little bit about chicken welfare and the way in which they're slaughtered and things like that?
Not exactly.
Okay. What were the moral reasons or the ethical reasons?
It just seemed like a better way to live. And not that I don't really care about chickens. It's just that it seemed that I would have a better lifestyle, and it would be an interesting thing to tell my friends that, hey, I don't eat chicken when they're eating chicken. And it would make an impact, given also that my faith also inspired me to do this too.
Oh, would you be willing to say something about what that involves?
So I'm Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
And there's a health message. We believe in the biblical, in Genesis 1:27, where they speak that only grains and seeds and fruits and vegetables are given. So it seems as if from the onset, the godly way to do it is to go plant-based diet. So that also inspired me to do it.
I remember that day in the course when we read Genesis 1 and then Genesis 9.
Yes.
And we were talking with you then about why somebody would privilege Genesis 1 over Genesis 9.
Yes.
But I guess in the Seventh-day Adventist tradition, the thought is we should try to aspire to the ideal of Eden as much as possible.
Yes.
And that involves eating only the plants and the seeds. Can you tell us something about what it was like in the context of your hometown in Kenya to stop eating meat altogether? Did that raise eyebrows?
It raised eyebrows among my peers, especially.
Yeah.
And also my parents were a little bit concerned because it seems natural to eat a lot of protein while growing up.
Yeah.
So that was their concern. But slowly by slowly, they let go, realizing that, yeah, it's really a good choice, but we don't really endorse it. I think it's also just general parental concern.
Of course.
Because we're already eating as I wished to eat.
Yeah.
And my dad was vegan already, but he would on and off take meat.
Okay.
So
you're just taking the religious tradition more seriously than your parents are?
Not exactly. I think there are a lot of factors that actually influenced my decision at the end of the day. But my faith definitely has a pivotal role in it, even for my family itself.
So then you come to Cornell, totally different context.
Yes.
And you're living on North Campus, which is where all the first years live, right? And there are these huge dining halls with industrial food, lots of variation. And
Yeah.
how was that to come to this kind of a context? And were you able to maintain your dietary preference?
I was able to maintain my dietary preference, but it was very hard for the first semester because I wasn't exactly used to see dairy and cheese in every single dish.
Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting, but the Cornell dining was very good about it, and with time I was able to approach the chefs or the managing students and tell them, I would like this, but I realize that it has dairy and cheese or has an aspect of meat, and they would be willing to provide a vegan dish.
Oh, that's great. So they were able to be flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd definitely say that dining halls have gotten better in terms of vegan options compared to when I first came in.
And then what about the course? So what led you to take, you had already thought through a lot of these issues, and so then what led you to take the course, and what were some of the things you remember about it?
So the most interesting thing is I thought this was a cooking class.
Whoops.
I really ignored the fact that it said ethics at the beginning.
Right.
Because all the photos I saw online were,
That's true, yeah.
were cooking.
Lots of pots and cooking.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
so this is a cooking class and maybe a little bit of etiquette. So I would really like to learn this aspect of the culture. But then when I got to class, I realized it's all about ethics, which is something I wanted to learn about. So listening to the different views that people have on animal rights, and even how people don't know where the food actually comes from, is something that made me appreciate more where I'm coming from. Because I have an idea of where the corn comes from, the beans come from, the vegetables come from, but many people do not. And having it fresh and ready is an aspect that I got to appreciate more. And relating it, especially Tom Regan and animal rights, he seemed to be very strong about his opinion, but the other writers who disagreed with him, and I did one of my papers on this, and it was interesting to find the different opinions and try to create my own opinion, which is something you encourage in the class. Right. It's not really factory farming is bad. It's more of these are the different aspects that we're presenting to you. Form your own opinion and relate it to ethics. That's an aspect I enjoyed about the class.
Oh, that's great, because that's our goal, to try to give people a sense of the options and then let them do some of their own thinking.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Well, Claudia, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. I'm sorry that we misled you with our photos into taking a class that you thought was about cooking, but I'm glad that it turned out to be a good experience for you.
It was a good experience. Thank you.